Chapter 20, Venturing into the Unknown. The heavy rain had stopped 2 days earlier. It felt like they had spent an eternity locked inside the bunker. What made her feel safe at first now suffocated her. For two people, the rations seemed limitless, but Sue had lost her appetite. Her eyes remained glued to the bunker's security cameras, looking for anything new in the bleak landscape. Signs of another disaster or the return of their enemies. Sue discovered no explanation for the red rain dissolving the coyote's body. She hadn't expected a science team to materialize to explain the ways of the new world. It would have been nice, though. But she only stared at the unfamiliar landscape, tinted blood red, hoping to find some answers. Nothing moved outside. Did anything remain alive out there? Ulysses had pledged they would leave once the puddles dried, but he had made himself scarce in the other room. Sue hadn't gone looking for him, so they shared responsibility for the separation. She assumed he wanted time alone to process the death of the world. If they hadn't found shelter, both the men who took Lucas and Lucas died in the red rain. With them dead or locked away in their own hideout, they weren't much of a threat to them anymore. If they hadn't lied about being part of the government, then they might have their own protective equipment. Bunny suits for all outside of their camera's views. Sue hadn't even known Ulysses long, so she didn't know who to trust. "Are you ready to go?" Ulysses' deep voice echoed off the solid walls, causing Sue to jump. He had a rifle slung over his shoulder, along with two massive backpacks. From his meaty paws, he offered a smaller backpack and rifle to Sue. She took the offered equipment, adjusting the straps to fit her frame. The straps on the pack dug into her shoulders, making her marvel at his strength carrying the much heavier load. Sue stood in Ulysses' protective shadow, wiping the sweat from her forehead. His bulk, along with his twin backpacks, blocked her view of the bunker's outside blast door. The door creaked open, and Ulysses stepped through. A strange red light flooded the bunker. As Sue stepped outside, she took the time to close and lock the door behind her. Depending on what they found during their journey, they might need a place to return to. Make it harder for raiders to move in. A reddish tint hung in the air like a lingering fog, with no rain falling. With no idea what horrors awaited them, Sue knew she wasn't ready to leave. Her breath caught in her throat and her heart raced. Ulysses' prodding moved her forward, even when she'd rather remain hidden in the bunker. An alien landscape of reds and browns replaced the familiar green and blues. It looked like the landscape in a cheesy sci-fi movie she once watched. The scenery appeared like a poor colorization of an old black and white movie. Sue's stomach churned. A puddle of brown goo occupied the spot where the coyote had fallen during the rain. No bones or fur remained, only a pile of slime. She wanted to reach out and touch it, but the questions of what happened to it kept running through her mind, stopping her. What the hell would dissolve a body this fast? Acid rain? Had the red rain been acid? They continued outside of the range of the bunker's cameras. Instead of finding the woods bustling with life, she found dead, defoliated trees. No birds, squirrels, or deer. Nothing moved. Only skeletal husks of trees, stripped bare, dripped red-hued rainwater onto the cracked soil below. A scene out of a post-apocalyptic horror movie. The destruction of the world outside the bunker made her heart heavy. Would life ever return to normal? Sue wanted to question Ulysses, but the words remained stuck in her throat. Besides, what answers would he have? He knew nothing more about what happened than she did. If only those men hadn't kidnapped Lucas, then they'd have some answers. But now she only had questions. They followed the road heading toward the next town. Sue's heart caught in her throat as she realized all the landmarks she remembered from the trip to the bunker were gone. She felt lost and scared. A sob threatened to escape, but she swallowed it down. How had the world changed so much, so fast? It seemed like yesterday, when arriving late for work had been her only worry. Now she fought for survival in a dead world. What do you think caused all this? Sue's voice trembled with fear as she gestured toward the destruction surrounding them. Ulysses shook his head, with a frown bending his lips. His eyes bulged as he swept the scene behind her. He grabbed Sue, yanking her inside the closest building. His grip bruised her arm. "Ulysses, what the—" His free hand covered her mouth, cutting her sentence short. Fear threatened to overcome her as she saw the fear reflected in the big man's eyes. He released her arm, pointing down the street in the direction they had traveled. An oversized gray SUV screeched to a stop in front of a derelict building. A large red flag with a yellow sickle and stars covered the upper rear panel of the truck. The strange flag confused her since it appeared to be a combination of a Chinese and an older Russian flag. All 4 doors opened and 5 soldiers jumped out, each armed with an automatic rifle, dressed in gray fatigues. They stormed the building, kicking the door in before entering, leading with their guns. Within minutes they returned, shoving a group of 6 people into the street. 2 men, 3 women, and a young boy. After shouting a few commands in broken English, the 6 people formed a line in the middle of the street. 5 guns barked and the bodies collapsed to the ground. A bout of laughter came from the men. Sue gasped, not realizing she had held her breath, waiting for the inevitable. She would have screamed if Ulysses hadn't covered her mouth again. Her heart pounded and her knees turned to rubber. Blackness crept into her peripheral vision. The mental breakdown was coming. After scanning the street, the men climbed back into their SUV, speeding off in the opposite direction from where they hid. None bothered to even take a second glance at the bodies they left in the street like garbage. Her eyes filled with tears as she thought about the people she watched die, helpless. She hated the feeling. Ulysses removed his huge hand from her mouth, wrapping his comforting arm around her. She felt the big man tremble. His reaction fed her fear. "We need to return to the bunker. It isn't safe out here," Ulysses said. Sue nodded because she couldn't find the words. So many questions ran through her mind. She'd ask them later if she had the chance, not expecting any answers. They sprinted back toward their home along the same road they had departed on. Ulysses dragged her behind him, his long stride setting the pace. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a reflection streaking through the sky. When she turned her head to get a better look, she found the sky empty. She stumbled, almost falling face first on the red dirt on the side of the road. The rain had tinted the entire earth an unnatural shade of red. Sue regained her footing, continuing their run. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched by some unknown entity. Had it been an enemy drone? No time to consider the question. She needed to run for her life. Their foolish plan to leave the bunker forgotten. They made their way back to the bunker without running into anyone else. Her spirits sank with this development, not knowing if her soul would heal. Foreign soldiers killing people on U.S. soil, while people claiming to be U.S. government agents knowing about their hiding place. No safe place remained for them to hide anymore.